You guys for coming out tonight. I know it was a little bit of a drive for some of you. Just a little bit about me. Let's see if I can work the computer. I've been in Polk County for about 40 years, but I was actually born in Tallahassee. That's where my mom is from. And I am a seventh generation Floridian through her. Her family was from the Madison area and near Wakulla Springs. They actually had a turpentine still just past Wakulla Springs. So they've been in the state for a long time. And these are actually my ancestors. And this is Narcissa Viana Blair, who I'm named after, also known as Viney, and apparently she like dipped and smoked a corncob pipe. It was very, on top of looking like the Grim Reaper in her prairie bonnet. So that's my mom's side. My dad's family was actually from Omaha. They were first generation Americans from Denmark and Poland, basically, and they moved down to Florida after World War I. Because after World War I, apparently everybody thought they could do anything and were moving all over, just trying everything. And my grandfather was going to run the Hollywood Beach Casino Hotel in Hollywood, Florida. And my dad was born in an army tent down there while their house was being built. And I felt like he was always trying to get back to the tent. Like he spent his whole life, he just wanted to be back outdoors. Like everything else was sort of an accessory to getting back to the tent. But so I spent a lot of time here in Polk County outdoors. We would go stay on people's cattle ranches and fish and shoot BB guns at cans. And my brother would try to chase armadillos, which doesn't work. If anyone's ever done that, you never catch them. My dad invented the Grove goat. If you don't know what that is, it's a picture that they're always sharing online that like, they're like, oh, that was Florida. I'm like, but that's my dad. And this is probably Claremont back in the day. And this is what he invented to load bulk citrus. So I come from basically a manufacturing family. There's not any sort of artistic background. We were basically producers on both sides of my family or attorneys. So it was like educated crackers and manufacturers. So in terms of my art background, I learned to paint when I was 13. I went to All Saints when it was really small. I think my class might have been like 15 people or something when I started there in middle school. And I was working on my first painting ever. And I had no idea what I was doing. What I wanted to do was making a huge deal out of it. And they took us to go see Robert Butler, the highwayman artist. He was painting at a bank somewhere in Winter Haven, and our class was so small, they just took our whole class to go watch Robert Butler do a landscape painting. And I remember watching him and being like, why am I making such a big deal out of this? He's not like, I know what this is. I know how to paint a landscape. Now that I see what he's doing, this all makes sense. And I went back and painted a landscape in 30 minutes and won awards for it. And like, it just, something clicked in my brain that I was just making too much of this. So that was sort of how I got my start. I sporadically painted. I painted a lot through high school, but when I got to college, I kind of feuded with the painting instructor. So I ended up majoring in English. And when I graduated, I went back to work at my family's factory in marketing and sales, because that's what you do with an English major. But that was really good for me. When I go speak to kids, a lot of times I tell them, you just don't know where all these things you learn in your life are leading you. Like it seemed really unintuitive for me to go from like art to English to working at a factory doing marketing and sales. But I learned a lot doing that from having to deal with people. I was really shy. So next thing I knew, I was calling the city of Miami for recalls and telling them to ground their 18 trucks for 2 weeks. Like those are like big calls that I had to make. I got to travel the whole United States, helping train the dealer network and produce videos and work on the website. So it was really good to have that experience, even though it seemed probably unrelated at the time. Not that I knew that I was even going to go back to art. But as it said in my bio, when my youngest was like 2 or 3, I was like, I should paint her. And I don't know what happened. Like next thing I knew, I was just painting all the time. I enrolled in night school at Polk State just so I could brush up, and I started taking workshops, and I ended up producing more than anyone needs as a hobby and spending more than anybody should on a hobby. And so I decided I'm going to declare myself as a professional painter and make this a business so I can write all these things off. And I'll get a tent and I'll go to the festivals and sell stuff, but I still didn't really have a lot of direction. I was doing a lot of portraits, and just I painted what was around me though. I'd paint groves and cattle ranches and things like that. But I feel like at some point I started, maybe as my kids could go around more, Julie here, my other person that would go with me everywhere, we would go to different parks and hike and do all of that. And I think as I was accumulating all of those places, I was saving it in my visual memory for later on. And I started to lean more toward doing these floral landscapes. Trying to see what else here. So I just showed locally. I did a big one-man show at Bach. I did one-man show at Lake Wales Arts Council. Bonnet House Museums, which was in my bio. That was actually a painting of Mike Osceola, who was descended from someone that was very high in the Seminole tribe during their formation. And so that was kind of an interesting one for me because I got to learn a little bit about their history, and I didn't really know anything. I remember driving past a place with my dad and him saying, "That's where Billy Bowlegs used to hang out and hide." And I thought he was talking about a pirate. Like, I had no idea. So this whole thing has been a big learning experience for me because I feel like in general, people are they're just not aware of Florida history. They're not super aware of the Florida landscape, what's native, what's not. So it's been a lot for me to learn. So I was doing that. I was setting up shows for the Arts Council because I worked there quite a bit. I set up to bring in Adam Bass, who was an up-and-coming wildlife and landscape photographer at the time. We brought in David Price, who's a local sculptor here, when you see the big alligator at Bach Tower. So I was doing all this sort of stuff, and it was heading in a direction, but I didn't really realize that. So the next thing that happened, if anyone, I mean, Suzanne's here, but a couple of years ago, I guess it was now, we had an opportunity to bring back funding for conservation of lands around Polk County, but it was a referendum issue. And so Suzanne formed a PAC to basically try to get this issue passed. And it was called Polk Forever, and it was nonpartisan. It was a really cool group. I kind of just got thrown on there. I don't think Adam even told Suzanne I was coming and now on the board. We just showed up. He unilaterally appointed me and Travis Thompson, and we all ended up on this board, and it was a fantastic board. And it was a good experience learning how to work together cooperatively with people that normally didn't overlap a lot. And we basically said, we're going to do whatever it takes to get this passed. But as part of that, I ended up being in charge of art shows because we thought, what's a good way to convince people they even like these environmental lands? They don't even know what they're voting on. We're talking about, I guess, Lakeland Highlands Scrubs. That's actually a Polk environmental land that was purchased during the last funding referendum. And I didn't know about it. I'd never even been to Circle B, and I was on the PAC for getting more of these lands. So we said, we'll do 3 art shows. We'll do Winter Haven, Lakeland, and Lake Wales, and it'll be all lands that were purchased during the previous referendum, so people can see what they got last time. And so it's not super politicized. It's more like an appreciation of how successful the last referendum was here, and it was all landscapes, wildlife, stuff like that were from those particular lands. And so we did sort of a moving exhibition. That was crazy. I do not recommend, but it was awesome, and it gave us it was a good way that wasn't confrontational to bring this to people so they understood why it was even important. So that's how I got more of a conservation-y tie-in, I guess, is how this all started. But that did pass. I don't know if anyone realizes that. Hopefully you all voted yes if you could vote. I think it was 60%. But there were actually, Adam Bass, who was a photographer, was on that board. David Price was on the board. I mean, it was interesting because we were pulling from the same board to do the exhibit, and then we invited other people too. But let's see, what else am I forgetting here? So we got that passed, and we're like, yeah, we're going to have a break. And then the city of Lake Wales decided that they were going to start approving tons of development south of the city. And I'm in Highland Park, which is just south of Lake Wales. Their boundary touches us, basically. And I was mayor of Highland Park at the time, involuntarily. And people started calling me and saying, I'm seeing all this stuff. What are you going to do about it? And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I haven't seen anything. And so at that point, I started to get more involved with land use decisions around Lake Wales specifically, but also some in Polk County, and trying to encourage decision makers to go with better types of development if that was where they were headed, where you prioritized open space, things like that. And I learned some things during that process. There were two people that said almost opposing things to me. And one was this fellow, Bruce, who used to be a stockbroker in New York City. He was originally from Lake Wales and somehow ended up in New York being a stockbroker. And he'd come back to retire and had gotten married, resettled here in Lake Wales. And he told me, you know, I could call somebody in the middle of the night and tell them I've got the best deal in the world. I'm going to make you like millions of dollars, and they would hang up on me. But if I call them in the middle of the night and say, oh my gosh, you're going to lose $2,000 if we don't act now, they would freak out and say, we've got to do something. He said, people are more afraid of losing than they are of what they could gain. And so that really stuck with me, is that's what's more motivating. But then Catherine Price, who some of you might know, said people get fatigued doing this. And you can't wear people out. Like, this is really hard work trying to do conservation, and we can't bombard them all the time with things that are freaking them out, because they'll just get tired and they'll stop showing up. And so I was always kind of like, how do we get anybody to do anything then? You have to scare them, but they're going to be exhausted and leave you. This is a terrible plan. So on the conservation end, I was dealing with we're the fastest growing county in the nation. 100 people a day are moving to Polk County. They don't know anything about this place. Like, how are we supposed to even make them care when they've just lived in their little development and gone to their restaurants and gone to work or whatever? And how do we encourage them to care without wearing them out? It was always my concern, because we want them to participate. And at the same time, I've got art marketing problems running through my head. I'm trying to figure out, how are we going to deal with the algorithm? I'm supposed to be producing all of this stuff all the time. And I started to think, what throughout history has made artists better known or more valuable. And what I came up with was, they were usually parts of movements or groups or something where it was more like people could lock onto a story. So, and then I said, do we even have an example of this in Florida? I don't know any Florida artists. And the only one I could really come up with was the Highwaymen. And it kind of verified my theory here, because it was a group that worked together. Because they were kind of under that name and cooperating, they were more successful. So I had these two things going on in my head. And so it's kind of similar to what we did with the Polk Forever stuff. I thought, maybe we just need to show them and we need to do it with art, because that's not fatiguing. That actually makes you feel good, and it's feeding you beautiful things, but also you're learning, oh, this is beautiful. Where is this place? What is this strange animal? What is this plant? So we decided we would form a group. I don't know where my slides are in relation to this. And I said, what if I make a co-op of artists? And we do artists that specifically focus on conservation-y storytelling type stuff. And I partnered with a conservation group called All Florida to launch this, and they help with scheduling, the website, all that stuff, because I didn't have any money to put into this or time. And I picked a group, I don't know if there were 7 or 8 artists initially. They were all involved in conservation. If they had to go somewhere, could speak to it, and we're actually out there doing the work. I wanted them to be nice people that I wanted to deal with, and they needed to have a web presence, because this whole thing focused around everyone sharing this and getting this algorithm to work. So my original group was me, Brad Ferris, who's a cowboy artist. If you have legislators going on a tour like Okeechobee, Brad Ferris has brought his airboat, and he's taking them and telling them all about everything. So that was a great pick for us. Adam Bass, who is a local conservationist and photographer, Brandy Ziegel, who worked for the forestry department, Kim Heiss, who's down near Miami, who's very into bonneted bats and wildflowers and things, Nathan Lemus, who's up in Altamont Springs, David Price from here, Jeff Ripple, and Daniel Bettler, who was a legacy highwayman. And we also incorporated Art History Fridays. So, which was kind of surprising because I thought, oh, people would be into these artists and stuff. People were really into the art history, partly because they thought it was showing them old Florida. And I learned a lot posting that stuff because I think a lot about how I'm going to phrase things. I don't like saying old Florida because it gives this idea that it's gone. And if I'm trying to encourage people to preserve stuff, I need to make sure they know it still exists. So we fought a lot of that, and I've been really careful not to be like, it's all gone, it's not here anymore, because like we're trying to tell them, no, it's still here, look how beautiful it is. But the historic artists really took off. I had reels, which are like videos on Instagram that were getting 4 million views. I mean, it was crazy. And so we got a very large following. We got up to 40,000 about right now, which is great for if you're an artist that's being shared on there. Not all 40,000 see your work. That's not how it works. But versus me trying to share stuff by myself every day, it's not, I'll be exhausted. I can't do it. So it's been nice to have that group, and everybody's in there. They share each other's stuff. Like, it's been very collaborative, and it's been successful because of that. Like, that's why it launched well, is everyone shared the stuff instead of just one person. So that's sort of what the Florida Gallery is. We also launched a print gallery in November, and coming from an artist perspective, I wanted to think about how to create passive income for artists, because we're like, how many paintings can I make a year, and do the marketing and do all this other stuff. So we're selling prints from the artists that we've represented, as well as historic prints that are now outside of copyright, and that helps sort of pay for our costs in terms of maintaining the website and doing all of that. So that's been kind of fun. We also do other products like wrapping paper and puzzles and all kinds of stuff. But that's up now. Something I think people are always interested in is getting artists to help with their storytelling, especially conservation organizations. Part of the reason I started with the Florida Gallery was I wasn't really happy with how I was seeing other groups use it. Especially if you think, like, say you're a Audubon and you've decided to do a show here, and it's one person, and like maybe you picked it was something that was all abstract. How is that going to look on social media? Is it going to, can they understand what they're looking at once it's on this little square this big? Like, is it impressive still? So I was seeing a lot of things that weren't impressive on social media, which is where the bigger reach was really, and where the opportunity was if you're trying to storytell. So I try to pick people that, and I think everybody should do this, pick people where the story is obvious and attractive initially. Like, you don't have to, I don't want to have to go read something before I'm like, oh, that's what I should be interested in. Like, I want to know that I'm interested before that. So I guess some of the things that I would say is keep in mind that for a lot of artists, it's their profession. They don't want to pay to play. They don't want to give things away. So I guess you got to think, like, what's it worth to them? How much exposure am I really giving versus what they're bringing me? And make sure that you're being fair to them. Online collaborations are great because it's free on both directions. Auction splits, like, I really don't like people to just try to get everything donated all the time. It's nice for professional artists, at least, to be able to get a percentage of the sale. Otherwise, you're just taking money from someone that's already broke. And it's not really very fair. So I'm like, why wouldn't you give them an auction split? This is insane. A lot of them will come do classes as long as you pay them a share of it to come do the classes. And doing speaking engagements, someone will do it for free just because it's good practice. I always think of it that way. But those are some ways that you could actually, I think, engage with artists in a way that's not damaging them and maybe more helpful to you. But what I've enjoyed most, I guess, is really getting to, this is one of my paintings from Dog Island. This is up on the Panhandle, and the Nature Conservancy owns probably 60% of the island, and people don't really landscape. So it's very cool if you're a native plant enthusiast. But and there's no bridge, so people aren't bringing over a bunch of stuff. This is the Emerald Cut. This is Tiger Creek, which is very close to here. Frost-proof. If you pretend that the road's actually clay. I didn't want to do the asphalt. This is Blue Cypress Lake, which is very close to Bureau, and it's actually the headwaters for the St. Johns River, which was shocking to me because it's so far south. But the St. Johns runs from south to north all the way up to Jacksonville. And I went and photographed this a couple months ago. Because I'm a nerd, I had to like be looking it up and be like, oh, are the water levels always this high? Like, why did they create this lake? So I was looking it up and realized it was in the headwaters of St. Johns, and was telling my friend Nathan Lemus about it. And he said the St. Johns is the best river. And I thought, he's probably right. It's kind of cool that this is the beginning. And like, so we're currently doing a project where we're trying to paint the entirety of the St. Johns. And it's been really interesting because I've realized I don't really know where anything is. Like when you navigate via roads or just on foot, it doesn't add up like it does when you start going on the water and seeing where the towns connect, and it all starts to make a lot more sense that way. So I've really enjoyed learning the land by the water. This is Patrick Creek, which is really close to here too. That's coming out of Tiger Creek Preserve. Some carnivorous plants for you guys. They probably don't all grow together like this normally, but it was Bach Tower. Yeah. That's Tiger Creek too. That's Sticky Steve's house, basically, for those of you that know Sticky. Some lupin, which I was told these are sky blue lupin, not scrub lupin. But if you're me, you just call everything scrub if it's at the scrub. This is, what do they call this now? Suzanne, what's the mainland for Brahma Island called? I can't think.
Mainland of
Brahma Island.
what kind of landscape?
What's it like, the name of the place? I can't think what they've named it. Eagle Haven. So that's Eagle Haven. That's out east of Lake Wales. But I get this is what I've loved is like I've now have a job where I get to go see these places. Like it's my job to go find this. I went up for the sunflower bloom. This is Lake Jessup. So this is part of the St. Johns, kind of close to, I guess, Sanford.
Right.
Yeah. And so you drive over very close to this if you're on I-4, but you just don't, you're driving fast. There's barricades, so you don't see this necessarily. But it's just huge fields of this on either side of the lakes for a big stretch of St. John's. It was really beautiful. So
Where did you set up?
we took the Guino out. But this is actually a view from an overpass by one of the boat ramps. We almost died. But it was such a good view looking out over that much because it's hard to see sometimes when you're on ground level. So we had to get up higher to be able to see that much of the field. This is out at Tiger Creek. That is Blue Springs, which is green. This is up, I'm trying to think what that is. This is the other Blue Springs, which is in Madison County. And that is Lake Miccosukee. So it's been really nice to get to learn all of these places. I mean, I grew up in Lake Wales and I had no idea. We used to read this story about this lady that would spread lupin everywhere. And I was like, oh, if we only had plants like this down here. These Yankee plants are so much better and beautiful. And like, we don't have anything down here. Like I had no idea that there were probably lupin growing in the scrub 5 minutes away from wherever I was. That's how much people just stay in their own little zones. So it's been really nice for me to be able to get out and see all this stuff and constantly learn and meet cool people and hopefully help a little bit. The other thing I really enjoyed about the Florida Gallery, because we don't make that much money, but knowing that people are getting the artwork into their houses, that's like more authentic Florida instead of just going to Hobby Lobby and buying like the Highland cow. Like that's my pet peeve right now. But it's been really nice to know that they're getting something that's a little bit more real and that it's helping support artists that actually made it by hand instead of just something that was generated online. So but that's it. Do you guys have any questions? Oh, I meant to show you this because people like to see how messy I am. This is my palette. This is actually my retired palette. I used this for about 10 years and then one of my students gave me a new one. And it's quite heavy because this is probably mostly lead white down here. But so I'm a very traditional oil painter. I think people forget that landscape painting isn't really that old. That's more, it came along more with the Impressionists in like the 1840s when you got tube paint. But 1840 is a long time ago now. So But so I use this, I paint on canvas, and I use solvents. They're not terrifying like people seem to think they are. Oil painting's not harder, easier than any other medium. You just learn how to do it. So yes.
We're gonna turn the lights on.
Okay.
So we can see that.
You can see my messy palette.
Everybody ready?
No.
Oh, there we go.
So that's one of my main tools. I also use a palette on the table sometimes, but it's nice just to have this here. So it's made to kind of just fit around my body and they're balanced so that it's not hard to hold this for hours. And, yeah. And so people are like, why would you waste so much paint? This is probably not a year, but probably half a year of like skins of paint slowly building up where a little bit was left over and it dried. And like, why am I going to waste my time getting that little skin off when I'm going to put the same color in the same place again? It does. So I think people have gotten very like labby almost like about their painting, and it's actually pretty traditional to leave it like this because it's if you're trying to be efficient, if we're being manufacturers, like why would you clean this up when it's not causing a problem? That's just more time. So I still have weird efficiency things running in my head from manufacturing days, like I can use to rationalize this behavior, but I don't know if anybody had any questions. We'll start in the front.
About how many paintings do you use?
Oh my gosh.
Like daily, weekly?
If I'm doing a larger painting, like 30 by 40, I can usually finish that in like about 3 days. And when I say 3 days, that's me working for 3 hours. Because I have 2 kids that I have to make sure that they eat, and I have to do all kinds of other stuff too. And it's hard to even get 3 hours a lot of times. And then if I go out and do studies or something, I might do 2 of those during a hike or whatever. And so I've spent 5 hours and made 2 small paintings or whatever. When you add in all the hiking and the travel and stuff. But so I don't know how many I make a year. A lot. And I think painters are probably faster than you think, unless it's like someone that's just like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to work from an abstract concept and get it down fast and then decide how far I want to go. I brought some little sketches with me, and you can see they're not super finished because I'm just trying to make notes of what the colors are, how light or dark it is while I'm out there, because it changes really quickly when you're outdoors. But it's so much more accurate to do it outdoors, and then I have that as a reference when I come back and do a different larger study or something like that. Go ahead.
What do you carry with you?
So I carry this, and when I go outdoors, I actually carry this huge palette, which I actually use it to carry the painting back a lot of times. So I'll set the painting on here and walk out with it on here. And then I have a folding easel that expands out and a bag of paints and brushes and some rags. And I mean, there are fancier setups, but a lot of times I'm going somewhere that's pretty far out. And if you're walking through the scrub, you don't want to be carrying like this huge box, and like, it's a lot to deal with. So that and a hat. Yeah. Yes, sir.
2 things. First of all, I think I speak for everybody in here. We all love Florida, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And you're right. There is a lot of it left, but we have to fight for it. And the second thing is, have you ever had the chance, or do you even want to go and do much in the Everglades?
I'm going down to the Everglades sometime soon. I have a friend that has a camp in the middle of Big Cypress, and so I'll go down there and do studies. And I actually just finished a painting, I guess it wasn't in here, of an Everglades wildfire. People send me cool pictures all the time, but I usually don't like professional photos. I'd rather get just whoever's random candom photo, and then I can be a little bit more intuitive with how I handle it. But I've been down there a couple of times, but I don't paint it a lot because I have so much to do around here. I tend to lean more toward the panhandle if I'm going to paint other things.
It's not nearly as sticky.
Yeah, I don't really like mosquitoes actually, or sunshine. So it's like I have to be completely covered all the time. And I'm strategic about what times I go out to places. Somebody said that they get really bad no-see-ums along the St. John's during certain parts of the year, and to be careful. So I'm going to have to call my IFAS agent before I schedule the rest of my St. John's visits for the year. But anything else? Well, thank you, guys. Oh, one more.
You work off photographs?
I do. So a lot of times I'll do the smaller studies outdoors, and then I take photos while I'm out there. But it helps to really have been there and soak it up and then come back, because I have a better sense for like what the place was really like in person. And then just
pause like 2 or 3 photographs for one.
the only time I do that is if I was making something really long. I might try to string, and usually I make myself crazy doing that because I don't like moving stuff around a lot because I like it to look like the spot. Like, say you want to like be like, that's my favorite tree when I visit that spot, and know that that's it and it's in the right place near the other right trees. I don't like to meddle with it too much just to make it a perfect composition. I think nature does really interesting compositions already, and I'd rather get a sense of the place that's a little bit more accurate than to make the composition too polished, I guess is where Yes.
Okay, I'm probably not going to phrase this exactly right, but is there work that you produce what's the match between the feelings you have about the work you have produced and how it's received from your customers? And is there a mismatch? Do you have pieces that you are super proud of that you feel like are not received as well?
Oh, this is a good question.
Or vice versa.
So I talked about seeing Robert Butler painting when I was young. And he said, I was making these beautiful landscape paintings. And I couldn't sell anything. I didn't know what was wrong. And one day I put a turkey in one of them. And it sold immediately. And so I've always kind of joked that this is like the turkey school of art in Polk County, because you had Tom Friedman, Robert Butler, like there are probably some others, that they would just stick a turkey and a deer in it. And then they put it in a cypress frame, and they would know people will buy it just for this Pecky cypress frame, if nothing else. And so that was what people thought paintings looked like here when I started painting. And I had a really hard time even selling citrus paintings because it was too abstract for what they were accustomed to. And they're like, where's the bird? Like, so I battled that for a long time. And I had stuff that I sold for just nothing, just to move it, because people had never seen it before and they didn't know what it was. But I also was like, I'm not joining this turkey school of art. So I'm just going to keep charging along until they figure out this is okay. And there were paintings I let go of for $150 a piece that I could get probably, oh my gosh, $1,200 for now, just because people hadn't seen it before and they're like, what the heck is this? So I did have, and I still battle against that because I sometimes like things more abstract than people do. They want to know what everything is. And I'm like, but it looks cooler like this, don't you? Like, we don't have to paint every twig. If you're just trying to get more of an impression of the spot, or sometimes the objective of the painting isn't making it look identical to something. And I think we tend to expect that more these days because people are so used to people from painting from photos. And when you do that, there's a temptation to make it look just like the photo. And I always try to keep in mind, I'm trying to make a painting and I want to make sure the paint looks really good. Not that it looks just like the photo, but that it looks beautiful as a painting, and my medium is really justifying its use too. Like, why am I even bothering with oil painting if it's just going to look like a flat thing that looks just like the photo? So that's one of the things I keep in mind.
Were some of the pictures in your presentation photos?
Yes. So toward the end, there are a bunch of photos.
Okay, because I wasn't.
Those were just cool. Yeah. Yeah.
You did paint a turkey though.
I painted a couple turkeys eventually. That's where I thought, I'm saturating my market here and I have to go somewhere. Where would I go? And I thought I'd like to go to Vero or to Palm Beach, but also maybe like if I had to go to the Panhandle, I should go to Thomasville, because there are no galleries in Tallahassee. Our grand and splendid capital has no galleries. So I said, Thomasville's a great spot. They do love landscape paintings, but they love wildlife. So I started painting wildlife so that I could go to Thomasville, basically. And I'm to the point where I do it my own way, and I don't have to do it to sell the painting. Now it's optional. So.
What's your favorite painting of your own that you've ever done?
Oh, I don't know.
Your personal favorite, not your bestseller.
It changes all the time. Right now, one of my favorites, and I think it was on here, I have a bobcat, and there's one. I couldn't even sell that bobcat. Nobody's interested in it. It's a predatory species. I don't know if that's the issue or like, it's beautiful. I'm like, it's basically a Florida cheetah. Why don't you like this? But so I have that one hanging in my house, and I just kind of stopped trying to sell it for now because I enjoy having it. And it was a pain painting all those spots and the invasive guinea grass and so yeah.
And then in general, what's your favorite specific subject to paint? Do you have a type of tree you love, a certain animal you love?
I really jump around. I think, and it's more seasonal. I do feel like I try to keep with like where I am in the season. I don't like to take a photo 6 months ago and then now when it was winter and now do that during the summer. That's strange to me. And so I think my favorite's whatever's going on now or wherever I just visited. And then I'm just stuck finishing everything else that I didn't finish until it's saleable. So yeah, it's whatever I'm working on now is what I'm in love with until I get frustrated. Yes, sir.
My apologies for double dipping.
It's okay.
Did I actually?
This is a triple dip.
Last one, I promise. Did I hear correctly? You said that you painted Mike Osceola?
His Mike Osceola Jr. And so his dad was Big Mike Osceola, who was whatever you want to call him during tribal formation. I don't know what they were calling them at that time.
I didn't want to infringe on anybody's sensitivities, but can you describe what that was like?
So I was doing a lot more portraits at the time, and my family owned the Chalet Suzanne here in Lake Wales, and it was closing. And Mike had been coming to the chalet with his partner for 20 years, every year and staying. And so he was there for the closing week, staying at the bar. And I met him there and was like, oh my gosh, because he was a very snazzy dresser. He had his full patchwork jacket and like everything. And he's a very handsome man. He actually looks, I think Osceola the war chief is maybe like his 5th or 6th great grandfather. And there's a strong resemblance. So I was very into like, man, it would be so cool to paint this guy. He's so cool looking. And he wasn't really very interested in that. He was kind of like, why? Like, we don't even know each other. Leave me alone. And so I was like, well, I just was interested in doing like floricultural stuff. Maybe I'll call my friend Pedro Zepeda. He's a Seminole like canoe maker. And he was like, no. Seminole. And they're like, Pedro is not like this. And he was like, he was suddenly jealous and he was highly cooperative after that. And so he came back and he brought like a cool cane, full, like beautiful antique patchwork jacket, gorget, like a silver gorget with like his clan and some associated clan on it, and like did the whole scarf, everything, and was amazing and was a very good poser. So, and I did a study of him, and then I did a more finished one, and he has the more finished one, and that was what was exhibited at Bonnet Springs. But he's a cool. His mother was a pretty well-known doll maker too, and I painted her portrait later on. But yep. Yeah.
So, I have a question.
Okay.
Do you like grapefruit and liver?
Yes, I do.
I made it for Valentine's Day
Yeah,
last year.
Valentine's.
Everybody always wants the secret recipes. Yeah. I like grapefruit with liver. I don't know. We'll give you a chalet story while I'm here. So the grapefruit and liver happened. So it's boiled grapefruit half with like cinnamon and sugar, and apparently restaurant butter, whatever that is. They would spray it on there and then put another layer of cinnamon sugar. So I didn't even know that was on there. And the secret is that you cut out the center of the grapefruit as well when you section it, so it holds the juice and it doesn't all run off. But so they broil that, and then they would put a fried chicken liver on top of it to serve it. And Lori's like, ah. But my Aunt Vita told me they had a big party at the chalet one time, and they had fried up a batch of chicken livers for hors d'oeuvres. This must have been a long time ago when this was appealing. And they came out too late, and everyone was going to their tables, and so they had all these chicken livers, and they were getting ready to serve the grapefruit, and they ran out of maraschino cherries, and they were like, how do we garnish these grapefruits? And so she grabbed the chicken livers and just started popping on them on the grapefruit as they went out of the kitchen. They were infamously cheap there, like very thrifty. So this all adds up if you knew them very well. So that's how, and then everyone loved it because it was like the sweet and cinnamony with like the salty fried.
It was your recipe. Because that story was in there. Was it like
Yeah.
David Magazine
Yeah.
or something?
Yeah. But no, and it's not a hard recipe. If I did it, I would probably just go pick up the livers at like the family restaurant where they fry it and just warm them or something. I don't want to fry livers in my house. But yeah, that was an odd spot. It's unfortunate it's gone, but maybe they'll write a cookbook one day. We'll see. Anyone else need insider like whales information? I have it all.
Blair, what awesome plant things do you want to learn this year?
Oh, no. Just be able to remember any names. I just learned what St. John's wort was, and I thought it was scrub rosemary that was just small this whole time because it wasn't blooming and it was near each other. And I was at Pontoon Island last week, and DEP let a biologist take us around, and he was like, "Oh, stop here." He said, "Look at the St. John's wort blooming. It smells so good." And picked it, and I was like, I had no idea this was a separate plant this whole time, but I enjoyed that. I don't know other plants I want to learn. I have a lot that I can't. You guys need to recruit Anna and Cheryl. I don't know if you know them. Cheryl that works at the Nature Conservancy, and Anna is a plant expert. Yes. So I always harass Anna when I don't know what the plant is called, so I don't have to learn. But I'd like to, in terms of pursuing plants, I'd really like to go up to the Panhandle and paint the carnivorous plants when they bloom. I think that would be a really cool one.
Yeah, carnivorous plants.
Yeah.
Some do.
I don't think like they do. Like they have big fields.
I think she means like the pitcher plant.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like I think she had a painting. There's
Yeah.
some spots in the Panhandle where it's just like as far as the eye can see.
But I think that would be a really cool one to go and photograph and paint it, because I want to see it in person. I don't want to just use someone else's photos. And I learned about a cool fern that I don't remember the name of while I was on Pontoon Island that was growing with the resurrection fern, but it was about this long with little like tiny tendrils. What was it? I don't know if that was it.
Maiden hair?
No, it was a native, but it was very rare. But they're about this long, the actual, whatever you call those parts, the veins. But yeah, so I see a lot of these things and I recognize them, but I don't know what they're called. So I probably need to work on that. That's about it. I always try to figure out which ones I can eat too. If it's edible, I will taste it or cook with it. Like I've tried the gopher apples. Yeah, they were weird. I would do it like maybe it's worth trying once, but otherwise leave them to the gophers. Yeah, it was still pretty, like it wasn't like astringent, it just wasn't good.
That's a trick.
Yeah.
Find out when it's perfect.
Yeah, and then I make homemade yopon tea, like I actually harvest that when I'm on vacation and toast it and do all, like, so I'm more interactive. I don't just want to ID, I like want to know what's going on. But in the appropriate settings, I guess is what I should asterisk that. Don't collect anything at a state park.
Any other questions? Let's give Blair a round of applause.